Hey folks, Dave here with a quick model making tip from Thunder Mesa Studio. Well, today I want to talk to you about coloring and finishing Hydrocal plaster castings. Hydrocal, if you're not familiar, is a special kind of dental plaster which is very fine, returns excellent detail from molds, relatively strong, and lightweight compared to other plasters. And it's often used by model makers and mold makers because of the high fidelity of castings you get from it. But when it comes to coloring and painting and finishing these kind of castings, there are competing schools of thought. But it really all boils down to one question: to seal or not to seal the plaster. And another way to put the question would be uh, transparent or opaque. You see, because if you seal the plaster, you're going to have to use opaque colors in order to get a nice finish on there. But if you leave the plaster unsealed, transparent colors will soak in and stain the plaster. So we're really talking about staining versus painting. And right here on my work table, I've got three identical castings from Hydrocal. And I'm going to use three different techniques to color them. And when I'm done, you can decide which one you like the best. Now for one of these, I'm going to put a coat of primer on here, and that basically seals the plaster. And then I'm going to go back and paint it with acrylic paints. And so we'll be using opaque colors on that one. For the other two, I'm going to be using transparent colors. For one, I'll be using the traditional acrylic wash technique. Some people use concrete stains. Some people have used RIT dye with mixed results. But I'm going to use acrylic washes. So I'm going to take some acrylic paint and earth tones and thin it way down with water and do some washes on here. And for the third one, I'm going to do something you probably haven't seen done before. I'm going to use watercolors. That's right, good old tube watercolors that painters use to stain the plaster walls. So let's get started by getting a coat of primer on this first one. All right, I've got some Tamiya Gray surface primer on this one, and I'm going to set it aside to dry. And while it does, we'll get started on one of these other walls. And for this one, I'm going to use the acrylic. I'm going to do an acrylic wash. And I'm going to start with, this is some Vallejo Dark Earth model acrylic. Just a couple of drops. And then I'm going to mix it with a whole bunch of water. Make a wash out of it. I'm using a big soft brush for this. You see how it just soaks right in to that Hydrocal. It's very, very porous, so it kind of soaks it up like a sponge. And you want this wash to be nice and wet because you want it to soak back into all of the detail, all the cracks and crevices. I need a little bit more of this. It's kind of a balancing act because on a small casting like this, you have to get it wet to get it back into all the nooks and crannies, but you don't want to get it too wet because that water will soak into the plaster and make it brittle. I want to darken up these the mortar lines a little bit, so I'm going to use my spray acrylic wash. This is black mixed with burnt umber. Do that, and I'm going to dab it off the top. Now I'm just going to come back with a little bit darker brown, also as a wash, not using opaque color, and just pick out some of the stones. Okay. Don't want to overdo it. I think I just leave that just like that. Now there is the traditional acrylic wash method for coloring plaster castings, and you can see it gives you a really nice result. This one that I primed, use the same wash on here to get back into the nooks and crannies. Dab that off just to darken those up a little bit. Now, using a thicker paint and a stiffer brush, I'm just going to dry brush this color on. So I'm just hitting the tops of the stone detail. Use a piece of cardboard to get most of the paint off the brush, about 99% of it. I'll do the same thing again, pick out a few stones with some different colors, but this time opaque colors rather than transparent, rather than washes. We want them actually just, I'm painting the stones instead of staining them. Something that flat colors do is they kind of flatten out all the details. So, do one more little step here. I'm going to add a lighter shade, and for this I'm just using some cheapo craft acrylics. This is a color called khaki. I'm going to dry brush on some highlights, and that's to bring back that detail that's been obscured by the flat opaque color. You really want to be sparing how you dry brush this on. And there is your stone wall casting, painted with opaque acrylic colors over primer. Now, the third technique I want to show you is one I haven't seen a lot of other modelers use, and that is watercolors. I've got some tube watercolors here. This is some burnt sienna and some cobalt blue. I'm going to mix those together in a little dish to get sort of a warm gray, very close to this color. And I'm going to make a wash of this, just like I did with the acrylics. But watercolors behave a little bit differently. They are designed to go on transparent for the most part. So we'll see what kind of results we get using this. Once again, I've got a big soft brush that I'm using. Add a little bit more of the burnt sienna if it gets too gray. One thing I like about the watercolors is that since they are designed to go on transparent, it's much easier to vary the strength, the intensity, and the value, that's the lightness and darkness of the color, just by how much water you put in it. A little bit less, you get a darker shade. A little bit more, you get a lighter shade. And you're going to get a much more realistic result by varying those things. Then, just like before, once again, go back and pick out some individual stones with a smaller brush, but I'm still using the same colors, just mixing them together in different proportions. For a warmer gray or a cooler gray, more blue, the grayer and cooler it is, more of the burnt sienna, and the warmer it is. So, create a lot of variation with very little effort this way. Now I'll show you one of the things I like the most about this technique. You can't do it with acrylics, and that's you take this is a completely dry brush. There's no paint on it at all, but it's a coarse brush, and you can scrub the color right off in certain areas and add highlights that way. So it's kind of like dry brushing, but I don't have any paint on the brush. I'm just taking the watercolor off of the high spots. It does require a stiff brush. This is a stiff oil painting brush, a hog's bristle brush, but these are available at any art supply store and plenty of places online. So you can take that and remove as little or as much paint as you want. Now when you do get the watercolor the way you want it, it's a really good idea to seal it with some Tester's Dull Coat or some other acrylic fixative. So there you have it. 3 different techniques for painting and finishing Hydrocal castings. Which one works the best? I'm going to leave that up to you to decide. They all take about the same amount of time. You get similar results. They all look convincing and good, in my opinion. I would be happy to put any one of these on my layout as part of a scene. So I'll leave it up to you to decide which one you think is the best. Let's take a closer look at these. Let's see. This. So we've got A is a traditional acrylic wash. B is sealed with opaque acrylic paints. And C is watercolor wash. Which one do you like the best? Let me know in the comments down below. Or if you have a different technique or what you think is a better way of doing this, I'd love to hear about that too. Hey, thanks for watching that quick model making tip. Remember, if you enjoy seeing this kind of content, don't forget to gently caress that like button. And if you really want to support what I'm doing here at Thunder Mesa Studios, you can head on over to patreon.com/ThunderMesa like these folks did and show your support there. Thanks for watching, everybody. Until next time, keep moving forward, and adios for now.